What up, friends? What a lovely evening it is. And today I'm going to be reviewing Silk Sonic's newest and debut album, An Evening with Silk Sonic. A supergroup, super duo between Anderson .Paak and Bruno Mars seemed like a match made in heaven. Two dudes with successful and respected careers using pop, R&B, soul, and funk, paying tribute to their roots and their influences. Like, what could be better? Pulled together by Bootsy Collins of all people, the group largely find themselves completing their mission. While occasionally derivative, the project is a lush and respectable recreation of everything that brought these genres to where they are today. The Silk Sonic intro is pretty fun, largely establishing the sound of the record with a sort of live show styled session. Bootsy Collins is a pretty fun host, although I will use this time to say that I kinda wish he was used more than just as a narrator. It feels like kind of under-tapped potential, if you ask me. The lead single, Leave the Door Open, is a fantastic way to kick off the main meat of the record. Anderson's verses are full of charisma and groove, and the simple yet intimate guitar and piano portions are just such a warm-sounding feeling that I love about this track. Bruno's soaring vocals contrast with Anderson's really nicely, and I just love the general progression and flow of this track. It's so sensual and seamless. I also really love how sensual and sultry the lyrics are too, especially with Anderson basically giving us a tour of his crib that he basically decked out purely for this girl. It's pretty funny. Fly As Me has a sort of jam band sound to it, which is a pretty nice change of pace compared to all of the other songs on the album. I will say that Anderson's flow on this one is a bit similar to some of his own tracks like Mansa Musa. However, the song is just so much fun that I just don't find myself caring about that all too much. The bounce that the funk-inspired guitar has, along with those claps in the beat, they're just infectious. It has this sort of raw charm that sets it apart from the more soul-influenced tracks on here. We are going to be hearing that chorus in every Old Navy commercial for the next 3 years. However, when the self-confidence vibes are this immaculate, I can't really say it's a problem. With After Last Night, we have that sort of smoked out, chill ballad feel with the glimmering synths and sensual brass. It's not as memorable compared to some of the other songs on the project. However, I really do like how the synths get a lot of time to shine here, and the flow of this one definitely has its own unique identity compared to the other songs at least. There's some great trade-off vocals between Anderson and Bruno, and I also really like how Bootsy gets a bit more presence on this one. He gets his own time in the sun, which is pretty nice considering he's not really on a lot of the other tracks. Other than that, though, it just kind of exists. It's not a bad track, it just doesn't really do much to separate itself from the rest. Smokin' Out the Window, on the other hand, is probably the most standout song on here. The attitude on this one is just so much fun, and the lyrics are a pretty stark contrast to the rest of the record, too. I love that groovy bass line and the brass, and I think this song does the best job at bringing those old school influences into modernity, sort of incorporating their own styles into their roots. This is especially prevalent in the lyrics, like with Anderson spending $50K on his girl at Tiffany's and how her kids are running around his house like it's Chuck E. Cheese. Of course, we also can't forget Bruno's iconic chorus and that bitch, of course. It has a sort of melancholic touch to the track's more spiteful nature, which adds a layer of intricacy that adds to the sort of love narrative on a lot of these songs. It has its own little identity compared to the rest, which is pretty cool. With Put On a Smile, I think that this track has that vibe that they were going for with After Last Night, but way more fleshed out. It has that sort of dreary night on the town after heartbreak vibe to it. I love the emphasis on the piano and the drums, and Anderson's flows are passionate and precise. Bruno adds a bit more of an elegant tone to match the instrumental, and his flow on the chorus is just super smooth. However, I also really love how they can add a bit of humor to the track overall, with Anderson expressing how he wishes he can turn back time on his rollie specifically. 777 is probably my least favorite song on the record, just because it's basically a not as good version of Fly As Me. Also, Anderson's flows on this track are super similar to the song R&P that he did with Corday, and I cannot get that comparison out of my head when I listen to this. This is especially true on the pre-chorus of the song. The party vibes are fun, but overall it just feels the most derivative sonically on the record, both from its influences and from Bruno and Anderson's works themselves. It's an okay track, but on an album with super intricate and intimate sounds, especially when they've already done this sound previously, being okay just isn't enough. Skate is an incredibly lighthearted and sweet tune with sunny flows and flowing guitar. It really feels like the light at the end of the Heartbreak Tunnel, especially with those triumphant string sections. I love the warm imagery of got your hair in the wind and your skin glistening, and how down to earth the entire premise of the lyrics are. It's just this sort of chill get-together with good company that I think everybody can appreciate. All of these elements create what would have been a summer bop if this album was released earlier, and it's just a super fun and a big grower of a song. Blast Off is a pretty cool ending tune, kind of continuing the vibes from Skate, albeit in a bit more of a mellower manner. I really like those subtle background vocals and ethereal synths. They give the track a spacey groove that matches the soaring vocals from both of the guys here. It's also pretty unique because it has the only instance of a guitar solo on the record, which is kind of a nice little send-off for the last leg of the project. It has that sort of 70s and 80s cheese to it, but that's kind of the charm of the entire record, to be honest. It also fits the sort of to-the-moon aesthetic in the lyrics, too. Overall, this album and Silk Sonic in general are a really endearing and passionate tribute to old-school soul and funk, which are genres that largely launched the success of Anderson and Bruno as they know it today. The instrumentals are lush and intricate, doing a great job in exploring all of the aesthetics from the era that they take their influence from. Everything about the project was tight and focused, however, I think it was a bit too safe in spots. I think Bootsy was pretty underutilized being stuck with narrator duty, and some of the sounds were a little too faithful for their own good. I would have liked to see Bruno and Anderson incorporate more of their own styles into this project without being derivative like they were on, say, 777. Of course, this isn't exactly what they were going for to begin with, however, I think it would have made it for a bit more of a varied listen overall. These are, of course, just very minor nitpicks because this is a really solid record. It's just maybe something to think about if they decide to keep this project going further. But I am feeling a on an evening with Silk Sonic. What a pleasant evening it was. I said that in the intro. How derivative. Of course, we do have to talk about album covers on this show, and this is a pretty good album cover. It captures the charm of the 70s and 80s, especially in the funk genre. They always had that sort of glitzy aesthetic to it with their faces at the forefront, and I think their outfits and stylings are really good for that project. That sort of warm brown hue to it is also a really great color choice. It captures the warmth of the record. I think this was just a great album cover for a great project. Of course, those were just my thoughts on the record. What do you guys think? Is this maybe your album of the year, or is it a bit too derivative for its own good? Let me know. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Ring the bell if you want to spend an evening with me in spirit. And until the next one, farewell.